Dear editors, what is the weirdest sleepover you've been to? My friend's mom was a raging alcoholic, but a very nice lady. We snuck some girls over when we were in high school. She woke up at 4 AM to get some vodka and found us all. She was really chill for about 25 minutes. Probably didn't know what time it was and was worried that we basically caught her drinking at 4 AM. She started making us pancakes and bacon and some iced tea, then asked if we wanted some cookies. When she put the cookies in the oven and saw the time and also that it was pitch black outside, she flipped her fucking shit. Called all our parents to come over and assumed we were all having sex and told our parents that. It was a wild night. My dad asked me what happened on the ride home and believed my story. You don't look excited enough to have just gotten laid. I slept over a friend's house once on their couch and his grandfather passed away that night in his chair, like 5 feet away from me. I didn't wake up until 2 police officers walked into the room and his mom quickly grabbed me and walked me into another room. All I could do was hear and everyone sounded upset. I was confused for the longest time until someone finally came in and told me that I spent the night with a corpse in the room. When we were around 14, my friend Phil invited 2 of us over to sleep the night. We get ready for bed in our PJs, and he says he has a magic trick to show us. He calls his dog, a big Labrador, over and puts a towel over his head. He then gets on all 4s and crawls towards the dog. The dog instantly becomes aroused and starts vigorously shagging Phil's head. He's just giggling wildly as the dog plows the towel on his head. Me and my other friend just stare at each other wondering what the fuck is happening. Eventually the dog comes all over Phil's towel head. Phil then grabs the towel and starts trying to wipe it on us for a joke. I went into instant rage mode at the thought of Phil's dog come touching me, so I punched him square in the face. He burst into tears and shouted for his mum. When she ran into the room to see what was happening, she sees 3 teenage boys, a strangely wet towel and a very satisfied Labrador. Phil then shouts, "Mum." They swore at me and points to me and my friend. His mum then goes fucking nuclear, saying she won't accept swearing in her house and proceeds to kick us out. I'll never forget being stood in the dark on the pavement at 10 PM in my PJs, looking back at the house where I just saw a dude go full buckache with his pet dog, wondering how in the fuck I'm going to get home and how I'm going to explain this to my parents. My cousin had a friend who always caked on the Macup. I never seen the girl without Macup. We were all getting sleepy and the girl with the Macup was still wide awake. Apparently she waited until we were all asleep and then washed her face. She got up super early and I had to use the washroom and she was reapplying her Macup again. Looking back, I feel so bad for her. She must have had some self-esteem issues. Not me but my sister. She was 16 and she went over to her best friend's sweet 16 birthday party where they were supposed to stay overnight. Now then, this gal's dad was a quite unhinged individual and had some peculiar methods for parenting. The day the party was planned he found out that his daughter's grades dropped and she was about to fail a class or something like that. I don't remember, but he was pissed. But instead of doing what any normal parent would, he came up with a plan of ruining his daughter's social life completely by embarrassing her in front of all her friends, or at least that's the official version. Anyway, the party went on uninterrupted until around 9 PM when my sister, crying and shaken, called my dad to pick her up. Apparently they were all sitting around chilling when her dad knocked on the door saying he's got one last surprise for the day girl, and then barged in with his dick out exposing himself to them, then chased them outside, ordered day girl to go back to her room and shut the door behind the guests. My dad was the first to arrive, called the cops, and went straight to the house, rang the bell, and clocked the guy straight in the jaw. He got a sentence. Then my sister's friend moved away with her mom after the divorce, and they lost contact. Her dad lived there for like a year, but had to move as well, because like in every little town no one really wanted him there anymore. I wonder what happened to that poor girl. Stayed the night at a friend's house when I was like 13 or 14. I fell asleep pretty early by our standards, i.e. before midnight, and awoke at 4 AM with my nostrils on fire, like burning, searing pain. Turns out, he had gotten high and watched old cartoons. In one of them, Pepper made someone sneeze, and so he tried to sneeze me awake by stuffing pepper up my nose. My best friend, when I was 13, was a girl from church who had an N64. I stayed the night at her house once in the hopes of getting longer access to Gauntlet Warriors. Not only did her family breed rabbits, but she had a room-long built-in bookcase of Furbies. Every time I moved, those bastards blinked their eyes and started talking. We walked in his house and his father was chasing the younger brother around with a belt like a fun game. Oh, and the kid was completely nude. When I was in grade 8, I went over to my friend George's house for a sleepover. We had a fun time playing video games and hanging out before going to bed. In the middle of the night I woke up to see George going out of the bedroom and walking down the hall. Figuring he had to pee, I dozed back to sleep. A while later I was jarred away by this crazy bumping sound, and suddenly George appeared in the doorway holding a very heavy chair from the living room by a single leg. He looks at me and says, "Here, this is for you," and tossed the chair into the middle of the room before turning and walking out. I was freaked out, but his mother heard the commotion and came in and calmly explained to me that George was a sleepwalker. I stayed over many more times, with George reliably getting up and doing weird things on many occasions. Sleeping over my friend's house, not understanding that he lived in a one-bedroom apartment and had to sleep in between his parents on a king size, and then my friend peed the bed. 10 years old. Slept over at my buddy's place for his birthday. His dad let us rent Rambo, First Blood and Rambo, First Blood Part II. All three of us watched them. Eventually we fell asleep on the recliners. I was nodding off when I noticed his dad staring at me. Just staring. I pretended to sleep and he just continued to stare the whole night. Me and my older brother were sleeping over at a family friend's house with his kid, who was also a good friend of ours, and when we woke up they sent their kid to school and let us sit around in the house playing his PS2. When I was 11, I had a really hard time sleeping at other people's houses. I guess it was sleepover anxiety. My buddy had a nice big house on the other side of town. I even thought it was gonna be great cause his house is so nice and his family was great. Had a great night. My buddy was lethargic, but we had hockey that day and I just figured he was relaxed and tired or something. 20 minutes after bedtime, he's already sawing logs. WTH, we were gonna stay up and watch his brother play Re 2. So I shook him up. He sits up, groans an inhuman groan, and puked all over himself. He was mumbling and shaking. Scared the living shit out of me. I seriously thought he turned into a zombie. An hour later I'm in my dad's car heading home. My friend was rushed to the hospital. He had meningitis. He almost died. His neck was stiff from hockey, he thought. He was warm cause he sat by a fireplace while we watched a movie, he thought. Visited him at the hospital a couple days later with a gift bag. We stayed friends for a few years after. I eventually got over the sleepover anxiety. I can safely say I've been having sleepovers with my wife at our home for a few years now. I went to a sleepover when I was like 6 and the girl whose house it was at had a pin it. It wasn't her birthday or anything like that. Her mom just thought it would be fun. One time I went over to my new friend's house to have a sleepover and was immediately greeted with a room full of dolls. As soon as my mom dropped me off at her house, she took me into this room that had the lights off and was filled with these porcelain dolls and creepy puppets. There was so many that they filled up a whole sofa, the floor next to it, and even sat on shelves on the walls. What was creepy about it was that she immediately started to introduce me to them by their names. She picks up this really old doll that was pale with red glass eyes and tells me that it was haunted. She told me that another friend that had stayed over had a staring contest with it and lost. When it was time to go to bed, she showed me another doll and told me that this one liked to run around her room at night, and if I heard little footsteps, that I should just ignore them. She even showed me another one that she said would bite you if it didn't like you. I didn't sleep at all that night and I never went over to her house again. When I was 11, I was at my friend's sleepover. We would tie each other up to the inversion table and keep it upside down until they answered the question that was being asked. Us being in 6th grade, the only question that we could think of is, who do you have a crush on? We all went to different schools at that time, so we didn't know the other people that were being said. Then the parents called us up for dinner, which was mac and cheese and hot dogs. The salt and pepper were labeled cyanide and arsenic. When dinner was over, we went back downstairs and ate chocolate and drank Pepsi all while playing Super Smash Brothers. We were playing Smash until about 4 o'clock a.m. My stomach had decided die, and then I threw up all over the floor. Good thing it didn't get on my blanket. I threw up 2 more times that night, and in the morning I saw that I had thrown up all over one of the kids' shoes. For breakfast we had, yep you guessed it, chocolate crate cereal and Pepsi as a drink, more chocolatey stuff. When breakfast was over, I had to throw up for the 4th time. The throw up shoes kid left disgusted at me. I decided that my body was not built for a diet of chocolate and Pepsi. I did have a great time though. The first and only sleepover I ever went to, it consisted of me, male, and my 3 female friends. And they knew I was straight, so I was surprised I was invited. At some point during the night, it was mentioned that I had been single and lonely for a long time. By the time the sun came up the next morning, I had played my first game of Foursquare. I had watched Mean Girls and Clueless for the first time. I got a back rub from each of my friends. I ended up in the center of a cuddle pile. 8th or 9th grade, I was spending the night at a buddy's house. We get up the next morning, and his mom is passed the fuck out on the kitchen floor. Hardcore alcoholic. My friend wakes her up to get her to bed when she says I puked in the car. You guys need to go clean it up. I said you're on your own, Matt, and noped on home. I'm a guy and a couple of my guy friends wanted to get together and play Battlefield Bad Company. It was fun for a while. When it got later, happened to notice those 2 under a blanket together. My young mind thought nothing of it, simply assuming they passed out. The blanket started moving, getting faster and faster, and I finally figured out what was going on. I was pretty shocked. After about 10 or 15 minutes, they peeked out and asked if I wanted to join. I called my dad and went home. Never spoke to them again. To clarify, I have absolutely no issues with gay people or people of any sexual preference. I was just mortified that I was witnessing that and that they asked me to join. We were all very young too, so that didn't help anything. Not going into details, I slept with 5 girls in a bed, and one of them was my crush when I was 13 to 14. Really happy moment, but still really weird for someone like me. One time when I was in like 3rd grade, I got invited to a sleepover at a popular girl's house. I was really nervous, and I ended up falling asleep right after we got our pajamas on. I woke up to one of them popping a snot bubble on my face. I don't remember what happened after that. My shame consumed me. When I was like 14, I stayed at a guy friend's house. We were strictly friends and we just hung out / played video games. I discovered that he moaned in his sleep and I never mentioned it. Went to a kinky after party. Sexy games and group sex all over the place. Turned out my sister was there. We played cards and sobered up. One time when I was in 8th grade, me and a friend stayed the night at our buddy's place and slept in their game / bonus room, and at around 6 AM his dad came in to get on the computer and play Mafia Wars for several hours while we are trying to sleep. He clearly had several accounts made to support his main account and was just logging in and out of them to collect money or whatever for his main account. We had a competition to see how long we could keep an avocado mask on. I won, but also realized I was allergic to avocados. Her mom tried to put essential oils on my face to cure my allergy. Made it worse, and I had to have my mom pick me up. Happened about 3 or 5 years ago back when I was in high school. Went to a friend's sleepover and woke up to take a piss in the middle of the night, only to catch one of my friends having sex with a female friend of theirs in the living room. I had a sleepover in 6th grade. I was the new kid, so my sisters played a bunch of fucked up pranks on us in our sleep to start my school year off right. Once we all went to sleep, I wake up in the middle of the night to see the host's sister taking a piss on my friend, who was sleeping on a bed next to me while I was on the floor. There were 3 of us besides the host, and sadly his sister targeted us instead of him. TBH, the boys' sleepovers on Saturdays are the best. We be chillin' in the hot tub and all of a sudden we are talking about penis size and masturbation, and then measuring our cocks. It was a sleepover that my mom surprised me with when I turned 13. She invited my friend that moved to Tennessee as a surprise a day before the actual party, and let's just say she had changed over the years. She had told me how she started hearing voices, so she's been listening to louder music to scare them away. She's been feeling pain she sees other people go through, and had started cutting herself and carving words in her arms. I can't remember which words exactly, and just straight up saying she was now a Satanist. After the very scary and awkward night alone with her, and after the party with the other 3 girls, we went to bed. The next morning I was too tired, get in the pool first thing with the rest of the girls, so I slept a bit longer, and while I was asleep, the friend that moved away told my best friend at the time, I'm glad Op didn't come swimming with us right now. The voices in my head were telling me to drown her. I haven't spoken to her since. This was 10 years ago. My friend had a sleepover for her birthday one year, when about half of us, including me, were asleep. One of them put a butcher knife in my hand. I woke up immediately, but that would have been fun. Spent the night at a friend's house, and at the evening, got news that my schoolmate was murdered a mile from where I lived. Living in a place that these things are super rare, small community, that certainly put a weird feel to the night. Late to the party, but oh well. I went to a sleepover in elementary school for a girl's birthday. Close to bedtime, the birthday girl asked if anyone had ever slept walked. Sorry if that's not the actual past tense. I had once, when I was a kid, which is a weird story in its own right but irrelevant here, so I mentioned that. So naturally the entire party of probably 15 other girls set up patrols to watch me sleep and monitor signs of potential sleepwalking for hours. Not sure how long exactly, because after hour 2 or 3 I finally was able to fall asleep. I debated pretending to sleepwalk a few times, but I'm a horror actor and knew I'd fail, so I never got up the nerve. A few years back slept at my cousin's, so it was me, M, my brother and my cousin, F. I fell asleep early. I have never been one to stay up till late. Woke up to my brother and my cousin playing with my belly button and my nose, so my cousin gets really nervous and tells me and my brother not to tell. I nearly start laughing because she got so worked up toying with me while I was sleeping, when if you compare her actions to my brother and sisters, that was at most a minor inconvenience for waking me up. Was babysitting for my friends and their parents came back, and we were all in bed and we could hear them. Never did it for them again. To all parents, they can hear you. My friend, let's call him 1, invited me and another one of our friends, let's call him 2, to a sleepover for one's day party. One sister had a massive crush on 2. So while we were sleeping, one sister took 2 sweater from the chair that we hung our coats on and slept in it. We woke up and looked everywhere for 2 sweater, but then one sister walked down the stairs wearing 2 sweater. 2 never wore it again. He went out and bought a new sweater after throwing his old one out. Went to a party. 2 friends, a girl and a boy, went because of me, and they called another friend, B girl. We went super drunk and danced like crazy, talked a lot about deep stuff while drunk in the street, and then went to B girl's house to sleep. Getting there, the other guy wanted to start a foursome, he's B, and started massaging B girl, but a girl was super tired and almost sleeping. As soon as we got there, B girl was still talking to us, but didn't want to do anything with 2 dudes, so I got her for myself, and we left the other 2 sleeping. It was a little creepy when the guy tried to start it, because no one was expecting that. At least it led to something good. 50% of the crowd got satisfied. I was around 13, and I had 2 mates over for the weekend. I take them to my room to show them my knife collection, and after a while we got bored and fucked around on our phones. I was laying on my bed and Tristan and Clayton were on the ground watching something, but the phone was facing away from me, so I couldn't see what it was. As it turns out, the phone was facing my doorway and my dad walks in to see those two watching porn right next to each other. I can't remember what he said exactly, but I was confused as fuck until they showed me the phone. It was the night before 6th grade and I invited my friend Bob over and we decided to go to the first day together. We are both guys. That night I woke up to him dry humping me and I felt super uncomfortable, so I just moved and slept somewhere else. I felt super uncomfortable, but I had no other friends, so I just dealt with it for 2 years, almost forgetting it. Then around the time I was in 8th grade I heard people talking about me dry humping him. It doesn't help that I was so obviously gay, but didn't want to accept it at the time. So I just did nothing about it, because I knew no one would believe me, because he was the popular jock guy, and I was the weird gay closeted kid that no one talked to. I went to a private Catholic school with all white and homophobic students, and I was gay and black, so I really stood out. Luckily I was moving to a public high school. I moved schools 3 years ago, and I can be more happier. People actually talk to me, and I'm not thought of as the weird quite gay guy and no one ever says homophobic things to me. I've only stayed friends with one person in the school though. It was my own. My twin sister and I were having our friends over to spend the night. Of course, teenagers, at night hormones flying, you know how it goes. There's this girl, let's call her Sophie. She is kinda a thought, has lots of guys in her DMs, and leads them on with provocative pictures. She and this other kid, we'll call him Jake, are dared to kiss. Oh. She goes for it, and after a few seconds lifts her leg up and fully climbs on. The girl I was closest to, we'll call her Jenna, she and Jake had an unspoken thing going on. So she was pissed, and I was puzzled at Jake cause he asked Sophie to make out again, and they did that. So I spent the majority of my night chilling away from them cause things got hectic from there, and I just chilled in a Discord VC with my other friends. I got invited to this big party with a bunch of friends and family. Dinner was good, there was some dancing. Eventually my date and I wanted to get out of there, so we helped cut up the dessert and said our goodbyes and ran out the door. Everyone waved goodbye. We headed to a hotel to get some peace and quiet. She never went home. After that hotel she followed me on vacation and then came back and just moved into my house. It's been 18 years and she just won't end this sleepover. It's really weird. My mom used to work nights back when I was in the 4th grade. She felt bad that we'd have to crash with her coworker's husband while he gamed on his computer all night. She found a friend who had a son my age who was having a friends over, so I got wrangled into that. Mind you, I've never met these people in my life, and I was a shy kid, so I wasn't too thrilled, but hey, at least it was better than doing nothing. The kid got all the boys in his room to play pitch black hide and seek. The lights go out. I found a choice spot to hide when that kid tries to vulture my spot. At the same time he stuck his hand down my pants to play with my junk. This wigged me out, so I shove him off and flip the lights on. Dude, all the other boys are pair off playing with each other's junk and kissing. I was told to turn out the light and play because this is how we play hide and seek. I said no, so I was kicked out from playing with the other boys. I just went to the living room to watch TV when the mom came in and asked what happened. It took some prying, but I told her what happened, and she called me a liar. Told my mom the same when she picked me up. Luckily my mom believed me because I wasn't a kid who lied ever, so I never went back. Fucking weird. I have 2 stories. The first was one of my birthdays, when I was a kid, when everyone was changing into their pajamas, or whatever. An ex-friend decided it won't be a wonderful idea to expose herself in front of all the other girls. I wasn't in the room when it happened, so I just heard from the other party guests. Also the next morning I find her eating the candy that someone had included with their gift to me. She thought candy lying around someone else's house was free to take. It's no surprise that years later and everyone that I knew who knew her absolutely hates her. As for the other one, this was only a few months ago, the night after my senior prom. After all the prom stuff, me, my best friend, her boyfriend, and our other friend all went to my best friend's house for the night. However, when me and my best friend get tired, we tend to go very loopy, and our chaotic energy builds off each other. A little while into the night, I'm on her back like a horse as the boys watch and we laugh hysterically. She then threw me on me face. We were both 12 and had been friends for a while. She had a very traumatic childhood before she was adopted, so she was pretty troubled, but I had a lot of fun with her. I was told about what happened to her, so I could look past a lot of her odd behavior. She had a deep obsession with babies, especially premature babies. Makes sense after being neglected. She probably saw herself in something so vulnerable. This obsession was rarely brought up in excess at sleepovers until our last one, where we spent the whole night scrolling through webpage after webpage of premature baby information, which included a lot of pictures. She refused to do anything else for hours and hours. I was totally unsettled the next morning, and it was the last time I saw her. I believe she grew up to be a nurse, so at least she pursued her dream job. My last sleepover was when I was 12, went over to this kid Bryce I had been friends with for a few months. Vibe was all good and everything, until it got time for bed. It was like midnight, so I was tired from running around. We were just throwing dodgeballs at each other, so I was ready for bed. When I said we should go to bed, he flipped out and had all his siblings. He had like 5. His mom was on her 3rd marriage. Play 6 on 1 dodgeball, just pelting me for suggesting the fun to stop. Of course that ruined the night, because this came out of nowhere. So when his stepdad came in to see what's wrong, Bryce claimed I tried to start a fight, so he sent everyone to bed. A few minutes later in the dark I heard some rustling, and as soon as I looked to see what it is, Bryce just slaps me in the face and walks back to his bed like nothing happened. I was too shocked to do anything, because no one did anything that out of the blue to me before. About 10 minutes later, I heard him coming over to my bed again, but was ready for him. As soon as he got to the edge of the bed, I clocked him in the face. Didn't do or say anything for the rest of the sleepover. TLDR, sleepover gone sour. Well, I went to this sleepover with a girl I knew liked me. She was kinda cute. After my shower I got out, and she walked in on accident, and I got dressed, and went and sat on her bedroom floor and started making a place to sleep, and she walked in naked. You could clearly tell she just shaved. So I knew something was up, and she was like, "Oops, thought you were downstairs." Anyway, I went and got something to drink and came back, and the blankets I had put on the floor were gone, and I asked her where they went. She said, "You can just sleep with me." I was like, okay. Anyway, we watched Netflix, and I reached over her to plug my charger in, and she was totally naked. We had sex and got in a 2-year relationship. So yeah, more happy than weird. I was a, I'd say, 12-year-old girl. This was a while ago. I went to a friend's house, and it was her day. She turned 16 and asked me to stay the night, so I did. Her 8 to 9-year-old cousin was also there. I wake up around 3 AM to see her 16-year-old self full out giving him and his puffy Cheeto-sized dong a blowjob. Then they invited me to join. I won't lie, I didn't just watch. That was a rather interesting night. So I'm actually the one in this situation who is classified as the weird one. I have a slight case of rolling around in my sleep. So I had invited my friend over for a sleepover. My mom was pretty strict on our bedtime, as we were only 13. So me and my friend had the brilliant idea of playing board games in my room until my parents went to sleep. We then went down at around 1 AM to go play video games. At around 5, we decided to go to sleep, so we didn't get caught. We went to bed, and when I woke up, I found myself on the ground, and my friend on the other side of the bed. He said that, in my sleep, I had been slapping him repeatedly, and at around 7, he moved me onto the floor, so he could get at least a little bit of sleep. He went home that day with the incarnate of death in his eyes. Was at a sleepover with my friend and a friend of hers. We all had a good time, and it was time for bed. We put on some Linkin Park to listen to while we sleep. I don't know why. I woke up because of some movement next to me. I rolled over, and they were fingiblisting each other not even 6 inches away from me. I just coughed to let them know I was awake, and tried to go back to sleep. Now my friend is super Mormon and posts anti-LGBT shit all the time. Meanwhile I'm kinda gay. This one time I had a sleepover with my cousins and my female cousin happens to sleep beside me. It's super normal for us. I was about 15 at the time, and she was 2. As cousins we really didn't care who we slept beside, but this particular made me rethink a lot of stuff. So it was about 2 AM, and I woke up see that my cousin was practically stuck to me. I tried to move a bit, but my other cousins kinda squashed me to her. It was a small room, and it made me uncomfortable as her ass was practically pressing on my dick, but I ignored and just slept. Then around 3 AM I think I woke up again to see that her pants was kinda low exposing. You know. Honestly she was pretty hot, and I did not know what to do at all as I was panicking, since my dick was basically 2mm away, and I didn't want to wake her up and make her think I was a weird fuck. So again, I tried to ignore and sleep. I woke up again to what felt like years. I don't know how long it was, but I was damn well sure I saw her stroking my dick, and I was basically seconds away from letting it rip, but I held back, since I'm fucking terrified, shocked and turned on. I can't remember much of what happened after that, but it was definitely unlike her. It was the first time it happened, and after that I tried to stay away from for a while to rethink of what happened. And it gave me some feelings towards her cause she's really hot, but I shut it down really quickly. It was possibly the kinda scary, really weird and my first ever physical sexual interaction, and I have never had such mixed emotions before. One of my friend's parents was going out of town, so he was sleeping over at my house. I invited a couple of other friends over too, and we got friend #1 drunk enough to pass out. He had never drank before, so it didn't take much. We then walked to his parents' house and partied hard with his parents' liquor cabinet. Then we decided to rob his older brother's baseball card business. Then we realized it was too long a walk with half a dozen boxes of baseball cards. So we stole his parents' car and drove them to my house. We drove the car back, walked home, and all went to sleep. Woke up in the morning like nothing happened, and he was none the wiser. That was the last time we hung out with him, which was probably for the best. I'm not really sure how we got it in our heads to do that stuff. None of us had ever done anything like it before. We were 13 years old, and it was the first few of many felonies we committed during our misspent youth. Many years later he did invite me to his wedding, so I'm guessing no one ever figured out it was us. I was dating that witch, but the date seemed failed. She kept telling me how I don't fit, or how we won't be together. But we were still doing it, and having a nice talk. Then, eventually, we started touching and kissing each other. But it was getting late, and I didn't want to miss the last bus, so I said I was going. She said that she'd sleep over me, but only sleep over, because we won't be together, and we don't fit, and aren't made for each other and such. Then you may have guessed what happened during the night. But afterwards, we just wanted to go sleep. But the bed was very small, and we had to compress, and we ended up waking up each other with every move one of us made. In the morning, she wasn't feeling well, because she didn't get a good sleep. She just got up, and dressed in a single peaceful body pineapple-shaped pyjama, so that I couldn't touch her skin. And she wouldn't even let me hold her hands or touch her on the face. She even refused to give a goodbye kiss. When I asked why she suddenly changed like that, "I don't like you that much, why not? You take too much space in bed." WTF. So she's been knowing that from the very beginning, that I'd take too much space in the bed, and that's why she was saying how we don't fit each other, yet she decided to take me into that tiny bed? I have a few stories, so here's one of them. When I was 7, I went to a sleepover with a group of friends. I woke up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water. My friend who invited us was on a chair and just staring at me, closed eyes, but I felt like he was staring at me, but me being half asleep just ignored it. I woke up again, and he was still there. I woke up 2 of our friends, just to confirm I wasn't seeing anything. We woke him up and asked why. "Are you on the chair?" He said nothing, and just laid on the bed. When we woke up, he was still on his bed, and said he has no memory of it. Pretty weird for me. Sorry for any grammar mistakes. English is not my first language. So, this is one of the weirdest stories in life. If you want, you can say I'm making it up for attention. This actually happened when I was about 6. So, it was midwinter, completely fucking freezing. my smaller cousin. Let's call him Mark. He was about 4, and one of my aunts. Let's call her Rachel. My grandpa and my grandma are staying over, and my parents are out on a bussiness trip. Our house was 3 stories tall. Because the base floor is too cold, my grandpa is sleeping on a couch, my grandma and Mark are sleeping in my parents' room, and Rachel is sleeping in the guest room, me in my usual place. Apparently, somebody broke in from the backyard and started rummaging around. My grandma wakes up and heads downstairs to get water. She finds the window open. The kitchen is just on Arctic levels. She decides that Rachel got hungry and convinced grandpa to make some food and that they forgot the window, closes it and goes back up. A little while later, Rachel wakes up because of a strange smell. Goes downstairs. The window is open. There are snacks and a half-finished fucking cigar on the counter. She says to herself that it must have been my Mark's dad coming to get him. Still kinda puzzled if he came there drunk or something. Then checks on Mark. Upon seeing him there, she decides that he must have wanted to avoid waking him up. Goes back to bed. At this point, Grandpa wakes up. He sees a few shady looking people outside the open looking window and doesn't question it, just kinda says meh and goes back to the couch. The next morning, all valuable belongings are gone. All wallets have been spread out and note-picked. We immediately call the police, but as it is, it takes hours for them to get there. There are 2 almost starving and over-dramatic kids, so Grandpa wipes the counter down and makes breakfast. After about half an hour when nobody arrived still, we got snacks out, latching on to chocolate. I think our whole family would have gotten a fine for messing with the police if it wasn't for the guys thinking Mark was cute. It was just ridiculous to everybody involved. Sleepover does not necessarily mean sleeping. As a participant in marathons, I spent many nights in various mountain areas during competitions and training. The strangest overnight stay was during a training session in the Atacama Desert, on the Chilean-Bolivian-Argentinian border. I flew in from New York for the weekend with the intention of climbing a volcano about 6 kilometers high, without acclimatization, of course. Which I did safely, reaching the summit at about 2 AM. There was nothing strange before, just a very bright starry sky. But when descending near the highway to San Pedro de Atacama, one of the brightest stars suddenly began to move and began to demonstrate intellectual behavior. She was following me. As soon as I looked at it, it began to approach, and it seems even began to acquire linear, but not very intelligible dimensions and contours. I felt creepy. It is all the more creepy when I noticed that our interest is mutual. As soon as I stopped looking at the object, he lost interest in me. It turned out such a sprint to the highway, about 5 kilometers. Don't understand why. Yes, it was definitely a fun sleepover, with the stars watching you. I've got 2. For one, about 6 of us, 5 guys and a girl, fell asleep in a room. I awoke in the morning to the sounds of the girl going at it with one of the guys, a BF. Us being teenagers and me not knowing what the hell to do in such a situation. I pretended to be asleep, to not be rude, I guess. When they finished, the girl was like, I'm surprised I didn't wake up. She was pretty damn loud, so yeah, granted. I said, I'm awake. The guy got mad and said, dude, you should have left then. Nah man, you should have waited till you had some privacy together instead of doing it around a bunch of other dudes. Found out later his brother was awake too. Another, I had just come out to my friends and we were playing Truth or Dare. The biggest dare was daring the guys to make out with me, and of course, biggest dare for me was making out with the girls. Managed to get 2 guys there to question their sexuality shortly after that night. Not something I'm proud of, as struggling with one's sexuality can be a massive nightmare. One of them is married to a woman, and the other joined the military. I hope they're doing okay. Oh god, I forgot about this. In the late 90s, my friend Adam and I had a lot of sleepovers, and usually we'd alternate whose house we stayed at. His parents were doing a trial separation where his mom lived in the house and his dad had an apartment somewhere in town. Anyways, one night I was staying over, and his dad showed up absolutely pissed, drunk and angry. Allegedly, his mom had went for coffee with some guy from work and somehow his dad found out. I remember the dude pounding on the front door demanding to be let in, and that he was gonna break a window. My friend and his older brother dragged him off the porch and onto the front lawn, telling him to get a taxi and sober up. They can talk about it tomorrow, etc, but he was not having it. His mom ended up calling the cops and he took off running / stumbling when she did. I ended up going home because I only live 2 blocks away. I never told my parents the truth, just that Adam wasn't feeling well. Man, all we wanted to do was play PlayStation and watch music videos. We had party in friend's house. We were 16 to 17 I think. We run out of alcohol early and the friend told us that he knows where is the secret stash of his parents. When we opened it, there was a lot of booze and video cassettes with porn from 80s and 90s. The wisest decision bunch of drunken horny teenagers can do. We watched them all together. A friend of mine confessed to me that he is bisexual during a 2-man sleepover. After he say you look sexy in that brief, he is still my friend until he say he likes me or want me to treat him like my GF 1 year later. While ask my sexual experience in public and being a bit inappropriate on a bus.